The call came at 6:47 in the morning. I know the exact time because I had just set my coffee mug down on the kitchen counter and watched the screen light up. My mother's name. I almost didn't answer. I had a presentation in 3 hours, a spreadsheet still open on my laptop, and a headache that had been sitting behind my left eye for 5 days straight. I answered anyway. I always answered, Elena. Her voice was bright, too bright for 6:47 a.m. I need to talk to you about something exciting. I should have known right then. My mother only called things exciting when they were going to cost me money. My name is Elena Marsh. I'm 31 years old. I'm a senior financial analyst at a logistics company in Charlotte, North Carolina. I have a 1-bedroom apartment I love, a savings account I built from nothing, and a family that treated both of those things like a community resource they hadn't been formally invited to use yet. I need you to understand something about my family before I tell you the rest of this. We are 4 people: my mother, my father, my younger sister Cassie, and me. On the surface, we look completely normal. My parents have been married for 34 years. My father coached Little League. My mother volunteered at the church bake sale every November. Cassie was homecoming queen her junior year. And I was the one in the back of every photo. The one holding the casserole dish. The one who remembered to send birthday cards and pick up my father's prescription when my mother forgot. I was the responsible one. That was my identity in this family, for as long as I can remember. Not the smart one, or the funny one, or the pretty one. The responsible one. The one you could count on. What nobody tells you about being the responsible one is that it stops being a compliment somewhere around your mid-20s. It starts meaning something else entirely. It starts meaning the one who pays. The exciting thing my mother was calling about at 6:47 in the morning was Cassie's engagement. Cassie was 26. Her fiancé, Derek, was 28. They had been dating for 14 months. I had met him exactly twice. Once at Christmas, once at my parents' anniversary dinner, and both times he had spent the majority of the evening talking about a food truck business he was definitely going to start any day now. She said yes last night, my mother told me. He proposed at the restaurant. It was beautiful. She called me crying. That's wonderful, I said, and I meant it. I did. Cassie and I were not close in the way some sisters are, but I didn't wish her anything bad. Tell her congratulations. We want to do dinner this weekend to celebrate, all of us together. A pause. And Elena, we're thinking about venues. There it was. Already? It had been 12 hours. You know Cassie. When she wants something, she wants it. My mother laughed like this was charming. There's a venue coordinator at the Whitmore estate who does consultations on Saturdays. $5,000 for the package tour. Your father and I were thinking, since you're doing so well at your job. I stopped listening for a moment. Not because I didn't hear her, because I needed a second to count to 5 inside my head, and remember that I loved my mother, and that she had once driven me to the emergency room at 2 a.m. when I was 9 years old, and had an allergic reaction to a wasp sting. I needed to remember the version of her that existed before my salary became a topic of family conversation. Mom, I said, I'll come to the dinner, but I can't contribute to venue tours right now. I have some things I'm managing. What things? You never have things. I have things. She sighed, the sigh of a woman who had been misunderstood her entire life by an ungrateful eldest daughter. I had been hearing that sigh for 2 decades. We'll talk at dinner, she said. We talked at dinner, and then I wrote a check for $4,000. Because my father looked at me across the table with tired eyes and said quietly, "It would mean a lot to your sister." and I had never in my 31 years been able to say no to my father's tired eyes. That was my specific weakness, and my family had learned to deploy it precisely. That was in March. By June, I had given Cassie's wedding fund $12,000. The venue deposit, the florist consultation, the dress alterations, not the dress, just the alterations, which somehow cost $900. Every time I said I needed to slow down, someone in my family found a new angle. My mother would mention how hard my father's knee had been bothering him. Cassie would cry. Derek would send me a text that said things like, "We really appreciate your support, Elena. You're like a big sister to me too," which I found deeply manipulative even as I appreciated the grammar. In July, I started having headaches every day. Not the occasional headache. Every day. Behind my left eye, then spreading. I was sleeping 5 hours a night. I had stopped eating real meals because I was always at my desk or on a call or driving to my parents' house to drop off something Cassie needed. My manager, a woman named Patricia who had been in this industry for 20 years and had seen everything, pulled me aside after a Thursday staff meeting and said, "Elena, you look like you haven't slept since Easter. Is everything okay at home?" I told her everything was fine. I smiled. I went back to my desk and finished the quarterly projections, and then sat in my car in the parking garage for 20 minutes before I could make myself drive home. The morning I collapsed was a Wednesday in August. I was in the middle of a conference call. I remember standing up to get water, and I remember the edge of my desk hitting my hip as I turned. And then, I remember nothing until I was on the floor and my coworker Marcus was crouching over me, saying my name very loudly and carefully. The way you talk to someone you're not sure can hear you. The paramedics came. Ambulance. Hospital. I remember the fluorescent lights moving above me as they wheeled me through the corridor and thinking absurdly that I had left my laptop open. The diagnosis was hypertensive crisis. My blood pressure had reached a level that the attending physician, a calm man named Dr. Okafor, described as a serious medical emergency. He said it plainly, without dramatics, which somehow made it more frightening. He said the contributing factors were stress, sleep deprivation, and irregular eating. He said I was lucky I had been at work when it happened and not driving. He said I would need to stay for observation for at least 4 days. I asked him if I could make a phone call first. He said yes. I called my mother. She answered on the second ring. I told her what had happened. I told her where I was, which hospital, which floor, what the doctor had said. I told her I was scared. I don't say that word very often, and I think she knew that, because there was a long silence on the line before she responded. "Oh, sweetheart." Her voice was soft. "That sounds so frightening. Are you comfortable? Do you need anything brought from home? I think it would help to have family here if you can come." Another silence. Shorter this time. "Elena, I have to tell you something, and I need you to not be upset." She took a breath. "We're actually leaving tomorrow morning. For Asheville. Cassie and Derek wanted a long weekend to look at mountain venues, and your father and I are going with them. We've had it planned for 6 weeks." I was quiet for a moment. The monitor beside my bed beeped steadily. "I'm in the hospital," I said. "I know, honey. But doctor, what did you say his name was?" "He said it was stable, right?" "Stable means you're okay. Stable means I'm not dying right now." "Elena, you know how Cassie gets if plans change last minute. She's already anxious about the whole planning process, and if we cancel now, Mom." "It's only 4 days. The hotel is non-refundable, and the venue coordinator has a wait list 6 months long. We've already put down a deposit." I didn't say anything else. I'm not sure there was anything to say. I thanked her for answering, told her to have a safe drive, and pressed the red button to end the call. Then I put the phone face down on the blanket over my knees and looked at the window across the room. It was raining outside. A gray, steady August rain. My father didn't call. Cassie sent a text that said, "Thinking of you? Feel better." And then nothing for the rest of the week. On the second day, the nurse brought me a form, standard hospital procedure, she explained. An updated visitor log and contact authorization. Would I like to restrict or approve any visitors? I almost laughed. The only people who would have visited me were in Asheville looking at mountain venues. I signed the form, approved general visitation, and went back to the novel I was only half reading. On the third day, Patricia came. She walked in carrying a tote bag with 2 containers of soup from the Thai place near the office, a phone charger, and a crossword puzzle book. She sat down in the chair beside my bed without asking if it was okay, and said, "Marcus told me what happened. I'm very angry with you for not saying something sooner." I started crying before she finished the sentence. I couldn't explain it then, and I'm not sure I can explain it now. I think it was just the specific relief of someone showing up who wasn't going to ask me for anything. Patricia stayed for 2 hours. She told me that when she was 34 she had burned out so badly she had taken a 3-month medical leave, and that it had been the best decision she ever made. She told me that my job would still be there. She said, looking at me steadily, "Is there someone at home? Someone who can actually be there when you get out?" "My family is traveling," I said. She looked at me for a moment. "Okay," she said. "I'll arrange for someone from HR to check on logistics. Don't worry about anything work-related." After she left, I lay in the dark for a long time. I thought about the $12,000. I thought about the $4,000 I had promised for the catering consultation next month. I thought about the last time I had done something purely for myself and could not come up with a specific memory. I fell asleep like that, with the ceiling above me and the rain against the window and the monitor marking every heartbeat with a small, persistent sound. My mother arrived on the 5th day. She came in the early afternoon, dressed well, her hair done. She had a gift bag with lotion and a magazine and a small box of chocolates that I was almost certainly not supposed to eat, given the dietary guidelines Dr. Okafor had given me. She kissed my cheek and looked around the room the way people do when they're assessing a situation for inconvenience. "You look better," she said, though I didn't think she'd seen me badly enough to compare. "I feel better," I said. "A little." She sat down. She asked about the doctors. She asked about the medication. She asked whether my insurance was covering everything, and there was a particular quality to that question that I recognized. I waited. "We had such a beautiful time in Asheville," she said. "The mountain venue is stunning, Elena. I wish you could have seen it." Cassie cried when she saw the ceremony space. She pulled out her phone and showed me photos. I looked at them. Stone terrace, mountain view, Edison lights strung between wooden pillars. It was genuinely beautiful. "I'm glad she found something she loves," I said. "The booking deposit is $30,000. My mother set her phone down. "Non-refundable, of course. They held the date while we were there, but we need to confirm by Friday." I looked at her. "Mom, I am in a hospital bed. My doctor told me my blood pressure nearly caused a stroke. I have been here for 5 days, alone." "I know, sweetheart. I need you to hear what I just said." She was quiet. "I am not going to contribute to the venue deposit right now. I'm not in a position, financially or physically, to do that. I need to focus on my own recovery." My mother pressed her lips together. She picked up her phone and put it in her purse. "I understand," she said, in the tone of a woman who did not understand and planned to revisit this conversation at a more strategic moment. She stayed another 40 minutes. She told me about the drive home. She told me Cassie's future mother-in-law had been difficult at the Asheville dinner. She ate 2 of the chocolates from the bag she had brought me. When she left, she hugged me at the door and said, "We love you, Elena. We just sometimes don't know how to show it." I didn't know what to do with that sentence. So I filed it away with all the other sentences I didn't know what to do with, and I got back into bed, and I slept. Dr. Okafor discharged me on Saturday morning. He went over the medication, the follow-up appointments, the lifestyle adjustments. He said the word stress 4 times. He gave me a printed list of resources. He shook my hand at the door and said, "Take care of yourself, Ms. Marsh. You've clearly been very good at taking care of everyone else." I don't know why that sentence was the one that made my throat close up. But it did. I was gathering my things, my phone, my charger, the crossword book Patricia had brought, when the nurse came in with discharge paperwork, standard forms, and tucked into the back of the folder because the hospital automatically generates one for any stay over 48 hours, was the visitor log. It was a single printed sheet. Patient name, room number, admission date. And then the log of everyone who had signed in to visit me during my stay. Day 1, no visitors. Day 2, no visitors. Day 3, Patricia Dwin, employer. Time in, 2014 p.m. Time out, 4:09 p.m. Day 4, no visitors. Day 5, Sandra Marsh, mother. Time in, 47 p.m. Time out, 3:22 p.m. Time out, 3:22 p.m. I stared at the sheet. 5 days, 2 visitors. I folded the page and put it in my bag. I took the elevator to the lobby. The automatic doors opened, and I stood on the sidewalk in the late morning sun. And I breathed the outside air for the first time in nearly a week. And I tried very hard not to think about the person I had expected to be in that log. The person whose name I had been carrying in the back of my mind since I was 8 years old, without ever fully understanding why. My father. He had not come. He had not called. He had sent one text on day 3. "Glad you're getting good care. Rest up." 9 words. The period at the end felt like a door clicking shut. I had spent 31 years making peace with the version of my father who loved me from a slight distance, who was proud of me in ways that he expressed to other people but rarely to my face, who called me his practical one instead of something warmer. I had told myself it was just who he was. A reserved man. A man of his generation. I had told myself that the slight distance wasn't about me. But lying in that hospital bed, I had thought about it more than I ever had before. The way he never quite initiated a hug. He received them, but he waited. The way he looked at Cassie and then looked at me, and the look was different. Not cruel. Just different. I had cataloged these things over decades without letting myself name them. In that hospital, with nothing but time and a crossword book and a cardiac monitor, I finally let myself ask the question I had never asked. Patricia called 2 days after I got home to check in. We talked for an hour about recovery, about the job, about what boundaries might need to change. At the end of the call, she said, almost as an aside, "Oh, I looked into the office insurance supplemental program for you. Someone from the HR team may reach out about extended leave options." Someone from HR did reach out. Her name was Joyce. She was efficient and kind, and she walked me through everything I was entitled to, which was more than I'd realized. 2 weeks of fully paid medical leave, eligibility for a reduced schedule for 30 days after, an employee assistance program that included free counseling sessions. I enrolled in the counseling. The therapist's name was Dr. Simmons. She had a plant on her windowsill, and a voice like someone who had heard everything and judged nothing. In our second session, she asked me to describe my role in my family. I talked for 20 minutes. When I finally stopped, she was quiet for a moment and then said, "It sounds like you've been parenting your parents for a very long time." I stared at her. "I never thought of it that way." "How did you think of it?" "I thought I was just..." I stopped. "I thought that's what being the oldest was." She nodded slowly. "And the money you've been sending? The decisions you've absorbed? The emergencies you've resolved?" At any point did anyone ask how you were managing? I thought about it for a long time. A real, genuine long time. My coworker, Marcus, I said finally. He's the one who found me on the floor. He came by the hospital the day after I got home. He brought breakfast sandwiches and didn't ask for anything. Dr. Simmons smiled. Tell me about Marcus. That wasn't the twist. Marcus is a good person and a work friend, and that is the whole story there. But what Dr. Simmons helped me understand over the following weeks was that I had been so focused on filling empty spaces in my family that I had completely stopped noticing the people who were simply, quietly, already there. I stopped transferring money to the wedding fund in September. I didn't make an announcement. I didn't send an email or call a family meeting. I simply stopped. When my mother texted about the catering consultation deposit, I replied, I'm not able to contribute to wedding expenses right now. I'm focusing on my health. When she called and the conversation escalated and she said, after everything we've done for you, Elena, I just don't understand. I said quietly and without anger, I love you, Mom. I'll talk to you soon. And I hung up. My hands were shaking when I put the phone down. But I put it down. Cassie called 3 days later. She was crying. She said I was ruining the most important event of her life. I listened to all of it. I let her finish. And then I said, Cassie, I love you and I want your wedding to be beautiful, but I'd given your wedding over $12,000 while I was putting myself in the hospital. I can't do more. She said several things after that, none of them kind. I stayed on the line until she was done, and then I said, I hope you have a wonderful wedding, and I hung up. My hands didn't shake that time. It was my mother who told me to call my father's sister, my Aunt Ruth, to smooth things over. She framed it as family mediation. She said Ruth had always had a calming influence on me when I was young, that I had loved visiting her. What she didn't anticipate was what Ruth would actually tell me. I called Aunt Ruth on a Thursday evening in October. We hadn't spoken in almost 2 years. She sounded genuinely glad to hear from me. We made small talk for a few minutes, and then I told her as briefly and clearly as I could what had happened. The hospital. The wedding money. My decision to stop. Aunt Ruth was quiet for a moment. Elena, she said. I've been wondering for years when this call would come. Something in her voice made me sit up straighter. What do you mean? Another pause. Longer this time. There are some things about your family that I've thought about telling you for a long time, and I think, after what you just described, I think it's time. The story Ruth told me took 40 minutes. I did not interrupt her once. My mother and biological father had separated when I was 8 months old. He had wanted to be in my life. There had been a custody dispute, quiet and quickly buried, that my mother had won by relocating and, in Ruth's words, making it very clear that she considered the matter closed. My biological father, a man named Thomas, had continued to live within 2 hours of our family for almost my entire childhood. He had reached out through Aunt Ruth multiple times. Each time, my mother had refused to pass on the contact. When I was around 7, he had reportedly stopped pushing, understanding that the disruption might hurt me more than the distance. But he had not disappeared. Ruth told me that Thomas had attended my college graduation, had stood in the back of the crowd, had seen me walk across the stage. She had seen him there herself, and had spoken to him briefly afterward. He had been following, from a distance, the broad outlines of my life, through Ruth, who had maintained a careful, quiet connection with him over the years, because she believed, she said, that I deserved to one day have the choice. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked. My voice was very steady. I was proud of that. Because you seemed okay, she said. You seemed like you had built something solid. I didn't want to blow up a life that was working. She paused. But a life that puts you in the hospital isn't working, Elena, and you deserve to know who's been in your corner. I asked for his number. I held it in my phone for 4 days before I used it. I called on a Monday morning, sitting on my apartment floor with my back against the couch, because I needed to feel grounded to something. He answered on the 3rd ring. I said, "Is this Thomas?" He said yes. I said, "My name is Elena Marsh. I think you might be my father." There was a sound on the other end of the line that I don't have a precise word for. Not a gasp and not a cry. Something between relief and pain, compressed into a single exhale. "Elena," he said, "I've been hoping you would call for a very long time." We talked for 2 hours that first conversation. He was a contractor, lived in Raleigh, had 2 grown stepchildren from a marriage that had ended 6 years ago. He was calm. He was careful. He did not try to make the conversation be something it wasn't ready to be. He said at one point, "I want you to know that I'm not going to ask you for anything. I just want you to know I'm here, if that's ever useful to you." I don't know why that was the sentence that broke open something in my chest, but it was. We have been talking for 3 months now. Weekly, sometimes more. He drove to Charlotte in November, and we had coffee at a place near my apartment. I was nervous in a way. I haven't been nervous since I was a child. He was nervous too. I could see it in the way he held his coffee cup, both hands, but we talked for 3 hours, and at the end of it, when we stood up to go, he hugged me carefully, like someone who understood they were still learning the edges of something fragile, and wanted to get it right. I am not going to tell you it fixed everything. I am 31 years old, and I have spent my entire life arranging myself around the needs of people who loved me conditionally, and that doesn't untangle in a season. Dr. Simmons and I are still working on it. I still feel the old pull sometimes, the reflex to answer a late-night call and say yes before I've heard the question, but I am getting better at pausing before I answer. My mother and I speak occasionally. The conversations are shorter than they used to be. She has not apologized for Asheville, though she did once say, in a sideways manner, that she hoped I understood she had been worried about me. I told her I did. I don't know if that's fully true yet. I'm working on it. Cassie's wedding is in the spring. I received an invitation. I have not yet decided whether I will go. My father, Thomas, is coming to Charlotte for Christmas. We are going to cook dinner together at my apartment. He asked if there was anything he should bring, and I said just himself, and then he laughed. And I realized I recognized his laugh. I had heard something like it in my own voice for 31 years without knowing where it came from. I have thought a lot about what it means to have been cared for without knowing it. About all the years someone was paying attention to the shape of my life from a distance, hoping I was okay, wanting to be let in. There is grief in that, and I have sat with the grief. But there is also something else, something I am still finding the right word for. The closest I can get is this. I spent 31 years being the one who shows up. The responsible one. The one who is counted on. And I never once stopped to wonder who was counting on me to be okay. Not what I could provide, just, okay. Now I know. And that, I think, is where I start. I used to think that being reliable was the same thing as being loved. For most of my 20s, I couldn't tell the difference. Every time my family called, I answered. Every time there was a gap, in money, in planning, in emotional labor, I filled it. And I told myself that this was what love looked like in practice. That showing up, again and again, without being asked twice, with how you proved your worth to the people who were supposed to already know it. What I understand now is that I had the equation backwards. When you make yourself infinitely available to people who never ask how you're doing, you don't build closeness. You build a system. And systems don't love you back. They just run until something breaks. In my case, what broke was me. On a Wednesday morning in August, on the floor of an office in Charlotte, with a blood pressure reading that my doctor described as a serious emergency. Elena didn't end up in that hospital because she was unlucky. She ended up there because she had spent years treating her own well-being as a line item that could always be deferred. Every time she said yes when she meant no. Every time she transferred money she couldn't spare. Every time she swallowed the thing she actually needed to say, that had a cost. The body keeps an honest account, even when the mind refuses to. Eventually, it collects. That's not cruelty. That's just how cause and consequence work. The choices we make about how to treat ourselves, and how we allow others to treat us, don't disappear. They accumulate quietly until the weight becomes impossible to ignore. But here's what I think is equally true and equally important. The same principle that brought Elena to her lowest point is also what carried her out of it. She made a different choice. She said no, and then she said it again, and then she stopped apologizing for saying it. She answered a phone call she had been afraid to make for 31 years. She let someone show up for her. Her coworker, her therapist, eventually her father, without immediately asking what she could give them in return. That took more courage than any of the years she spent being the responsible one, because it required her to believe, maybe for the first time, that she was worth showing up for. Intelligence without self-respect is just competence in service of other people's comfort. Strength without boundaries is just endurance with a better reputation. And integrity, real integrity, means being as honest about what you need as you are about what you can give. Elena didn't become a harder person. She became a more honest one. And those are very different things. One closes you off. The other finally lets the right people in. If any part of this story felt familiar, if you recognized yourself in the reflexive yes, the tired eyes, the calendar full of other people's emergencies, I hope you'll sit with that recognition for a moment. Not with guilt and not with anger, just with honesty. Because the moment you can see the pattern clearly is the same moment you can decide to do something different. And different, it turns out, is where everything worth having actually begins.